Previously in this, as I've been talking, I've referred to my dad's wives as my stepmothers and stuff like that, but they do have names. I don't know why I was just referring to them as stepmom, but anyway. So my mom is his first wife. I believe he was 21 and she was 19 when they were married. She grew up in Cascade, Montana, which is about 30 miles from Great Falls, and then my dad was from Minnesota, but he was stationed at Malmstrom Air Force Base close to Great Falls, and that's when they met, when he was over there. I'm not even sure, I'm not positive how they met. That's interesting. I should find out how they met. But anyway, so they were divorced when, I think, again, I was in second grade or something like that. And then they had myself and my sister Denise. And then my dad was remarried to Diana, and seems like I was still pretty young, so I think it must have happened, somewhat quick. And they had my sister Blossom, that I'm close to today. And so I'm not sure, off the top of my head, I can't tell you how long they were married or when they got divorced. But actually, yeah, it was when my dad ultimately ended up being stationed in Spain, and he went over there. And I think it was probably just long enough that they, for whatever reasons, they got divorced, and my dad married Robin over there. And so by the time my dad and Robin were married, that's when I was coming into my teenage years. And so we developed a pretty good relationship. Spent a lot of time with Robin, both just, being a family, but also doing a lot of whether hunting and fishing or different stuff. And so my family and I are actually close with Robin to this day. So she's a wonderful person. She's been remarried for many, many years, and we love her. So, so they, again, I must have been early high school or late junior high when they divorced, and then my dad married his fourth wife, Debbie. Debbie was also just a wonderful, wonderful lady. And sadly, we've fallen out of touch. I'm actually hoping to be able to. Last I knew, she lived in Great Falls, so and I had Facebook messages with her within the last year, and told her I'd be there. And she had a daughter, Lana, who was a stepsister, but then my dad, I believe, legally adopted her, so she was my sister, half sister by adoption, whatever. But anyway, it's been many years since I've talked to Lana as well. But I hope to reconnect with Debbie. Spent a lot of time out at my dad and Debbie's house. They owned the Kibby Corner Cafe in Rainsford together for several years. It was a cafe, truck stop, and ultimately gas station, and they ran the business. And Debbie was working there before they ever got married, and then I think they ended up purchasing the business once they got married. And so, but we spent in my high school years, spent a lot of time out there with my dad and Debbie in Atlanta. So And then I guess it was there was a period of time when I'll talk more about, but things happen, and ultimately my dad had completely alienated himself from both of my sisters and really me, but it got to the point where there was zero contact between him and my sisters for many, many years, and still to the day he died, there wasn't for well over 20 years, 25 years maybe. And it was my dad's fault. He, takes two maybe sometimes for a relationship, but he did some bad things, and alienated himself. And then because he was too proud, he never made it right. And that's another lesson that I hope I've learned, and I'm learning, and I can. I'm gonna when I mess up, take ownership of it. Learn to apologize. Learn to humble myself. Those are qualities my dad didn't have, unfortunately. He had them in his heart. I know he did. But he didn't know how to say he was sorry. Later on, he somewhat did. But it was really hard for him to humble himself. And so what happened was those relationships just went away. Now, he never forgot them. So the one difference between my sisters and me, even though my dad and I went about 20 years without seeing each other, but the one difference is that while they had complete isolation from him, they didn't want him to even know anything about them, where they were living, anything about their families or anything like that. For some reason, I felt it was important to always keep a one-arm attachment, so to speak, where at least, I wanted to know where he lived, and I wanted him to have access to get a hold of me if he ever needed to. So if I ever moved or changed my phone number or something, I would always tell him. So, but during those 20 years or so that we just had no, and this is after I became an adult, and it was after I served in the Navy for 4 years and moved to Portland, and just some, things happened, things from the past, and just things from, then that just drove us apart, where, nobody wanted anything to do with him. But I always kept this arm's length attachment to him. So sometimes a few years would go by where there'd be no communication, like sometimes 2 or 3 years. I haven't talked to my dad in 2 or 3 years. But then there'd be a phone call, and sometimes it would be me that I would decide to call him, and sometimes vice versa. And so we'd talk. And when we did those things, it was typically one of two things. I shouldn't say that. One of three things. The best case scenario is that we would actually talk, and it would be a good conversation where, we'd find something to talk about, he was always fascinated with my job. I was working in the funeral industry, and so he would take a big interest in that. Just, ask me all kinds of questions, and so we'd have a good conversation. I enjoyed that. Or he would, ask about, my kids, which, none of my 5 children got a chance to really have a good, grandfather relationship with him. My 2 youngest, Jordan and Aiden, did the lot. They've only, unfortunately, got to see him twice before he died, but both times were great experiences. I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. But so sometimes those conversations were good that way, where, yeah, good conversation. Other times, and maybe even more often, they were just shallow, just like, how's the weather? Just how's work going? Good. Okay, that's it. Into that conversation, and it's just like there's just nothing to talk about. So, but it wasn't necessarily bad. It just was a very shallow conversation. But just as often, whether it's him calling me or me calling him, they would just end bad. He would just, during the conversation, he knew where people's buttons were. He knew how to upset them. He knew, and he would, sometimes like he would do it on purpose, I think, where he just was not nice. And so, it was after, even after Crystal and I, we've been married going on 17 years. But even after we were married, I hadn't seen my dad in over 20 years, or close to it. And she knew that I'd talk about him sometimes, but she knew that he'd call once or twice or whatever. And usually, he would call, and I'd walk outside, take a walk around the block and talk to him, or in the backyard. And he was the only man, even in my adulthood, it was in my 40s and 30s and 40s, but he was the only person in the world that could bring me to tears just with his words. And he had that effect, where it wasn't good. And so she never knew whether I would, at the end of the conversation, whether it's like, oh yeah, my dad's doing great, or, whether I'd be all shaken up, because, whether, I'd be crying, or whether I'd just be really upset, or I'd be angry or whatever, and just what, I don't ever want to talk to him again, but yet I did. So that's just kind of the dynamics there with him, with that. So with the family, once again, I just wanted to, for the purpose of this, I've been, privileged to have 4 stepmothers, and they all were really, really good in their own ways, and they accepted me and my family and my children and all that, and were really good to us. So anyway, that's so his first wife is my mom, Rosemary. His second wife was Diana. They had my sister Blossom. His third wife was Robin, who we're still close with today. A lot of years went by, we sort of lost touch, but thankfully we've sort of reconnected especially in recent years and stuff, and it's been wonderful. So, and what's really cool is that Robin and my mom are close, and that is a really, really cool thing that they get along great. You know, they'll visit and spend time together and stuff. And then fourth wife Debbie, which I would just a sweetheart, and I would love to be able to find her and reconnect and just see how she's doing. I know she was remarried. Sounds like very happily remarried, so I'm very happy for her that way. And then Kathy, and I can't say enough about Kathy. I'm going to be seeing her. I'll be at her house tomorrow, and again, she's in law enforcement like my dad was, and so she's got she's a tough lady, but she has a heart of gold, and she's a sweetheart, and she's been nothing but good to us. And she was very, very good for my dad. She's the one that took care of him until his dying day. She's the one that took care of all of his needs. And so I'm eternally thankful to her for that. So I'll be spending the weekend with her and hopefully have some more time to, just talk about memories and talk about my dad and some of the positive stuff. So anyhow, I'll stop talking for now. It's making good progress. About due for another power nap here if I can find another rest area. So I'll talk to you later.